For the purpose of the recording, let's start again. Good afternoon to all of you, and good morning to some of you. I am Debbie Fawcett with GED Testing Service. I want to thank you all for joining us for our guest consultant today. Critical reading and the RLA extended response is what Steve Schmidt is going to be speaking with us about. But before we get started, I want to ask you to be mindful of a couple of things that we like to ask of you before we do these. Please keep your sound and your video muted. Some of you may want to go off camera, but it's not required. I choose to go off camera so I can watch some other things with Stephen while we are there. But most of all is just please keep the sound muted to limit the background noise. We want you to use the chat function to ask any questions that you have. Please keep in mind that it's being recorded, as I so deftly moved us over to, and all materials that are spoken about today, we will post at this website. And I know a lot of people will ask throughout, but it is on the GED website at the hyperlink listed there. Those of you that use the website know you can go to Educators and Administrators tab, Professional Development, the drop down under the Educators tab, and go to PD and the webinars. And that's where this information can be found. We get it posted within 3 days. I say 72 hours. We try to be faster than that, but that is our window to get it posted. Most important thing people ask me about is, where do I get the certificate if you are turning it in to your supervisor for professional development? You will download the certificate. We don't email a certificate to you. You can download the certificate at that website, where the PowerPoint, the recording of today's session, the handouts, and the certificate will be provided for you. So those are a bit of the housekeeping duties. And with that, I would like to turn this over to our guest speaker for today, Steve Schmidt. Steve.
Thank
Welcome
you
to
so much.
Tuesdays for Teachers.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you so much for your warm welcome. We were talking about how warm it was, and I feel that warmth. And thank you for the warm welcome today. And I want to say welcome to everyone who is here for our webinar this afternoon. Just a brief introduction of myself. I'm very happy to join the GED Testing Service PD family. I have been involved in adult education for more than a day, actually 32 years, in fact. Done some work as an instructor, coordinator, was a local program director, and I have been a professional developer since 2010, including in that time the 9 years that I spent at Appalachian State University in beautiful Boone, North Carolina. I have worked since 2019 as an adult ed consultant. And among the work here, I also work as the Links reading and writing moderator. And I've been serving for the last year as the COA presenter coach. And so all that sounds good, but I really always introduce myself. I'm pretty much an adult ed gig worker is what I am. So that is my introduction. So if we could go on to the next slide, please. So what are we going to do today? And what are we going to learn? And that's a good question. We're going to talk a little bit more about the reasoning through language arts extended response. We are going to approach it, though, mostly from a reading standpoint. We will talk some about the writing part of the task as well. And I'm a firm believer in that we should never assume anything. And I always try to treat folks that I work with, anytime of a PD opportunity, to assume they may not know some of the background. So we'll start with a little bit of background so we don't assume anything. And if we're talking about the extended response, in other words, this essay that students are writing on the GED language arts test, what we see is that students are going to be reading two short passages, and typically one is in support of something and one is opposed to it, a pro-con argument. I also do understand that recently some new prompts have a longer passage with both sides of the argument in them. So that is also something our students might be seeing. And they will be reading those two short passages and then responding to a prompt. And that prompt is always the same. So they know we know what they're facing and they know what they're facing. And that prompt is what we see in the middle bullet point on the screen. In your response, develop an argument in which you explain how one position, or in other words, the pro or the con, is better supported than the other, and incorporate relevant and specific evidence from both sources to support your argument. And so that is the standard prompt that students will see. And there is, and has been for many years, kind of an urban legend or a myth, if you will, that there is one secret side of the argument that is the right side of the argument. And let me dispel that myth. Let me dispel that legend, which has been dispelled any number of times. But a good argument can take either side. A good debater can take either side of an argument. And my daughter, in her high school years, did debate for several years and spent a number of time debate tournaments and was able to see good debaters in different tournaments take various sides of the same argument. And a good debater can argue either side. And that's really what is being looked for as these argument essays are being scored, that a student can do this. So there is no one secret right answer. Students can say, yes, the pro side is better. Students can say, yes, the con side is better. They can go with either side of the argument and still write a good argument essay. So there is no one secret part. We'll continue to mention that there is no one secret side that's right until everyone gets it. So if we could go back one slide there. Oh, see, Debbie, you're giving me a workout here. Let's go one slide forward, please. So let's talk a little bit about the argument and understand those if we can. So the one thing that I've noted as I've talked with instructors recently is some challenges that they have had working with students. And one feedback that I have received is this, and that is, okay, we've read both sides of the argument, but my students couldn't really tell me what the argument was. And so we really need to make sure that our students are feeling good about what the argument is. And so I've been really working with this task, oh gosh, for about 12 years now, and thinking about what can we do? How can we help students be successful in dealing with this topic? How can we help students build a bridge, in other words, to argument writing? And what I'm going to introduce today, and one method of doing this, of building this bridge to argument writing, is using reviews. And we'll talk a little bit more about this. So if we could go on, please, to the next slide. One thing that we want to do always with our students is try to move from what is known to the unknown. We want to move from the known to the unknown. And we'll be thinking, okay, well, why is that important? That is one of the basics of teaching. If we think about our brain, we are always trying to build dendrites in our brain. We're trying to build those areas that are able to create and absorb information. And dendrites don't grow in a vacuum. They just can't grow in our brains in the middle of nothing. They extend from other dendrites, existing dendrites that are already inside our brain. So it's very sound educational practice when we are able to move from the known to the unknown. We're able to build off existing dendrites that are already inside our student's brain. And we know also, certainly a best practice from reading instruction is anytime that we can activate prior knowledge, we know that that will make learning easier for our students. So the thinking is really the same here. We're going to try to think about, okay, how can we take argument writing, which may be new, which may be different, which may be something that our students haven't experienced before, and how can we start with something that they are more familiar with? And so we're going to take a look in just a second with reviews and reviews of various establishments in the local community. If we can move to the next slide, please. So, what we want to do is think about using reviews, and we'll get into detail with this more in just a minute. We can build off this in a number of ways. We can ask students, what is your favorite music? What is your favorite song? What is your favorite movie? What is your favorite restaurant? What is your favorite food? And they will usually you be able to answer that fairly easily. And then we could get into the why question. And once we get into the why question, we are starting to build an argument. So using reviews really builds off this. And we'll take a minute and look in just a second at some positive and negative reviews of various things inside the community. One easy way to do this is to use a Google review. And generally, any business in your community will have a Google review, and it's easy to search for that. Usually, when you search for anything on the right-hand side of the screen, the Google review will pop up automatically. And if it doesn't, we can always search for Google review and the name of the establishment. And typically, what we'll see is some stars, and then people will write some things in support of their review. So, as we're looking to build to argument writing from reviews, it would be a good idea in class to look at some positive reviews and some negative reviews. This is just like in an argument with the pro and with the con. So, and I think it's good to choose places that students are familiar with. Maybe it is a local pizza place, maybe it is a local Chinese restaurant, maybe it is a local park. Some things that students might have interacted with inside the community. And I think that's also important when we do things that students are familiar with, that it shows that their experience and their community really do have a place within our classroom. And as we look at these various reviews, we can start asking some questions. And these are just good questions we would ask about many readings. What's the author's purpose here? Do we think their argument is effective? And we can then get into the weeds. Why is this effective? Why is it not? What patterns, after we've looked at a number of reviews, what patterns do we see in what was effective and what was not effective? And eventually, after we've reviewed reviews, after we've analyzed reviews, we can ask students to write their own reviews. And we can say, don't take my word for it. We can take Jean's word for it because she makes her students write a review about the facility food. And let's see if I'm adding two and two together and getting four. Kind of have a feeling of what facility that Jean might be talking about. And I can imagine those reviews would be fairly interesting to see, and hopefully the cooks don't get the chance. Yeah, I had figured that that was a carceral environment, a corrections environment, and I'm sure that those are very good. But Gene, well done. That is a great way of building a bridge, not only just to get students writing, but a great way to build a bridge toward argument writing. And maybe there's a certain day when the food is better than the but I'm sure those are I'm sure those are great to read, and probably a lot better to read those than to actually eat the food. But anyway, so what we're going to do then is build a bridge to argument writing using the Google reviews. If we could go on to the next slide, please. And I'm glad that I've already got some street cred from Gene. So thank you, Gene, for the street cred there. So we see on the screen an example of like to do any type of webinar to be as participatory as possible. We want to be as participatory as possible. So we are going to answer these questions that are on the screen, but let's read this review first. This is a review is from something in my local establishment. And if we look closely, we might see who the author was. Steve Schmidt, who is this guy? Um, I actually choose a review I've written because I love Google reviews. I write Google reviews. I look at Google reviews thoroughly before I do business with any local person in the community that I do not know. So I really take these very seriously. So let me back up a little bit. In August of last year, I was driving until that time a 2001 Toyota Camry that had 265,000 miles on it. And my dear wife kept telling me, Steve, you need to get a newer car. This thing's going to fall apart if you continue to drive it anymore. And she was very. So we ended up buying a 2019 Toyota Camry. I work in adult ed, so I'm not buying a big fancy car. I'm not going to grow here. So anyway, we went to a couple of dealerships, and here we were going to have both the good and the bad reviews. This is well, I won't say anything. Let's read the review first from Steve Schmidt, who got one thumbs up. Okay, so he gives this particular business 5 stars. Let's hear what he says. He said, it's weird to talk about yourself in the third person, but anyways, he said, I give Cars Plus the highest possible rating and would buy from them again. We recently bought a used car here and helped family members buy another. My in-laws, my wife's mom and dad also needed a new car. And so a couple weeks later, we helped them buy a car there. Mitch was a pleasure to deal with on both sales. The whole process went very smoothly. Mitch was genuinely concerned about giving us a fair price, and he did. The only charge beyond the sales price was sales tax and tag, the license tag. Everyone we dealt with was pleasant and was happy to have our business. Thank you, Cars Plus, for a great car buying experience. This is the way buying cars should be. Okay, so we've heard the review and we can look at it also here on the screen. So I'm going to ask in the chat, please, if you would answer the questions we see at the top of this slide. What was the author's purpose? Who is their audience? And if we're really feeling motivated, is their argument effective? Why or why not? And I will tell you, as the author, I will not be at all disappointed or upset or cry if you say that this argument was ineffective. I have my big boy pants on today. I can handle it. So thank you. And I see everyone on their screen typing. All right. So let's see. Margaret says the purpose is to emphasize good service. Audrey says persuade other people to do business with Cars Plus, and the audience is car shoppers. Thank you, Audrey. And Jean says to give a review for anyone who needs a car. And Audrey says effective. Yes. Thank you, Audrey. So now we want to get into the whys. And thank you, Margaret, for this as well. Glad you're still enjoying that warm day in Connecticut and haven't fired up the grill yet. Glad you're still participating. Let's see. Thank you, L. Jackson, to give a review. Let's see. Margaret says, I want more details of the financing. Okay. And good, but this is really what we want to see. We really want to get students into the analysis here. And actually, Margaret, I'd be happy to help you make a couple payments on the car if you're interested. We still have a few more to go. But anyways, of course, that's not contained in the review, so we don't know that. But she wants to know, well, how are they like dealing with financing? And that is outside the scope of the review. Thank you, Tamara. And let's see, Althea says the author's purpose. And let's see, so let's get into now effective. Is this effective? Not effective? Why or why not? And Rachel says, we do have some concrete evidence with the friendly service. And let's see, Margaret says, tell me more about makes them friendly. Okay. That's true. We've just mentioned that, but we didn't say, they greeted us with a smile, or they didn't say, they made it, they were like glad that we came in every day. Maybe they gave us a sandwich or a drink, which sadly they didn't. But anyway, I'm all about the free lunch. We didn't get one there. I have done that at other car dealerships years ago, but not recently. Let's see. Tamara says, thought it was effective in giving information about the process and personal attention. Okay. And thank you, Irene, on the purpose. And she says somewhat effective. And Irene, I would love for you to tell me, please, why? What makes it somewhat? And let's see. Jean talked about fair price was what you were looking for and that they came through. Yes, they absolutely did. And Althea says, okay, it is effective for those who may feel unsure of a business that will treat their customers fairly. Because certainly car dealers, and in particular used car dealers, don't exactly always have sterling reputation for treating people well and giving them a good car at a good price. This does not always happen. Let's see now, Irene, thank you for following up with good service and treatment. It's not every day that the presenter calls you out. And that's you to put that in. So thank you for being a good sport and putting that in there. Okay. So the big thing is we've analyzed this. We've looked at purpose, we've looked at audience, and the key thing that we've really done is analyze the argument's effectiveness. And that's the big thing that we're trying to get into. Let's see, L. Jackson says, she'd like to see maybe a few more things about to gauge effectiveness or not. So thank you everyone who's responded. So Debbie, please let's go on to the next one. And I bet we have another review. We do. We have another review. I'm wondering, since if the other one was positive, I have a strong feeling that this review was probably a negative review. And as we look at this one, maybe we'll get away a little bit from the author's purpose and audience. And instead, let's talk about the argument's effectiveness. Let's focus on that. And I'll ask you again to chat that, please, in just a second. So the key thing is this an effective argument? Why or why not? Let's read it. This review is from that Steve Schmidt guy again. And let's see, looks like he gave this particular review 2 out of 5 stars. Okay, so here's the review. On the plus side, Randy Marion has a wide selection of cars, offers them at a good price, and both salespeople we dealt with were nice. On the downside, both cars we wanted to test drive had issues. One needed a jump start. I'm still laughing about that. And the other's tire pressure warning light was on. And we actually took it to my mechanic and he put more air fixed that one. So we brought the car back in better shape than when we left with it, but that's a story for another day. The upholstery on most of the used cars we looked at was dirty. Actually, in one of the cars, it looked like a full 2 liter drink had fallen down, and the whole back seat had, I don't know, Coke or Pepsi on it. And I remember the salesperson responded it by putting down the fold down seat so we couldn't see it. That was hilarious. I'm still laughing at that. But anyway, okay, get back to the issue, Steve. The big issue is what's behind the scenes. Once you start to talk price, you'll find out about several large non-negotiable fees. On the Toyota Corolla we looked at, there was close to a $900 fee for some protective coating and a close to $900 document fee. There was also an additional $300 tax on the document fee. These fees moved the needle from a good deal for the buyer to a good deal for Randy Marion, and that's the name of the dealership. The salesman from the dealer where we ended up buying said, it's practices like these that give car dealers a bad name. So, in other words, it was the guy at the place we bought the car from saying about this place that these practices give car dealers a bad name. So, let's really focus, please, on that third question. Is this an effective argument? We've got a negative review of a dealership, and please let's get into specifics. Why do we think this is effective, or why do we think this is not effective? And again, don't feel bad about offending the author. The author is interested in our analysis skills, not in his feelings. Okay, we'll wait for folks. And thank you for doing such a great job so far and putting these things in the chat. And let's see what we have so far. Good. Folks have been working. Margaret says it's effective in turning me away from the dealer. Physical details don't inspire trust or convince me that this dealership has high standards. Yes. Don't go there, Margaret. Let's say Judy says argument is effective because specific examples. Okay. Thank you, Judy. And Jean says evidence was specific and effective. So anyone else looking at the evidence, was it effective? Why or why not? Let's see, L. Jackson says it's effective because we have specific reasons and a reason for buyer beware. All right. And Irene says specific examples. Margaret says, I got the money details. Yes, yes, you did. Yeah, because I thought when we were in the dealer and we had talked about that, we're walking because they wouldn't negotiate on these fees. They let us walk. They didn't even try to stop us. So, but of course, that's not in this. We can't talk about that. Althea, thank you, says the argument is effective. Prospective customers will know what to look for. Yeah, unexpected fees. Gosh, I had that was a lot more than I could stomach. And let's see, Audrey mentions it's effective because it acknowledges positive, but clearly communicates that price was the author's main value. Yes, Audrey, you know me well. Price was definitely the main value there. And let's see, Marcia says it doesn't have a stated claim. Okay, true and good. That would be a great thing to bring out with students. It really doesn't come right out and say, don't buy a used car at Randy Marion. Thank you, Marcia, for bringing that out. Tamara says, states a few minor positive, but then gets specific as to the other things. And so, and I think we could really build on that, Tamara, because we could talk about that it's not just a rant. It's not just attempted just to say all bad things, because I did mention a couple of the good, or excuse me, the author mentioned a few good things that had taken place inside the review. So thank you everyone who has participated in the chat. This is golden because we're seeing what makes an argument effective and what makes it ineffective. And we're also at the beginning taking a look at author's purpose. And we're thinking about audience. And that's important because as we write our RLA extended responses, we have to remember to have more of a professional or more academic writing tone. And we are trying to bring that out. Not every review that we read is certainly going to have that, and we could talk about that too. So, oh, and good. And Gene brought up another excellent point, the fact that this was a year ago. And so, yeah, who knows how things have changed at this dealership since that time. And that would be another thing to bring out because sometimes we do see Google reviews that are 4 years old, 5 years old, et cetera. And they could be under new management, have different policies. And Gene, that would be a great point to bring out in the discussion. So thank you so much for that. All right, we did a great job. Pat yourself on the back and let's go, please, to the next slide. So, what our big goal was, again, was to try to build from the known to the unknown. So, we took something reviews of places in the community of which your students might be familiar. And we were building a bridge to argument writing based on those. Once we've built this bridge and once we've examined a number of arguments, once we've analyzed them, and once we have done what Gene suggested and have the students write their own reviews, which is a whole lot easier to do than the RLA response, it's a good baby step in that right direction. Then we can start building to the specific claims that we would see in the argument essay. And so this would be a good time then to build and talk about the parts of an argument. And I am once again putting the link for the handout for today inside the chat because I will be referring to that in just a minute. And so if you have that copy downloaded, that will help you as we do that. So we're building to the CRE, or in other words, the claim, reason, and evidence. And so we could begin to put, the purpose of the argument, what we saw is a claim. And that's, a simple definition for a claim would be a statement that's true or should be done that others might not agree with. And so we have an example, a claim that wasn't necessarily said, but really the claim that comes out of that first review we read is that Cars Plus is the best dealer in town. So we have our claim, that which we believe, and then from that we have reasons why we think In this case, Cars Plus is the best dealer in town, some statements that support the claim. And one of those could be the staff is very friendly. We could also see they offer a good price. We could also say they stand behind the cars they sell if you have a problem later. And we could bring up several reasons to back up our claim. And then finally, always we want to back up our reasons with evidence. And that's going to get into specific information that supports the reasons. These could, but are not limited to things like facts, statistics, data, and expert testimony. So getting into some things we might could say, well, why, what supports my reason that the staff is friendly. It could be I received a friendly greeting when I arrived, which I did. The salesperson listened to what I wanted, which he did. The finance manager was funny, even when he was taking my money. He was funny. He joked around with us and made the unpleasant experience a very pleasant experience, and actually enjoyed the time with him, even though financing afterward. So anyway, getting into the parts of the argument. So we've built from the known to the unknown, and we've gotten into claim, reason, and evidence, and we can then attach labels. But these labels aren't just floating in the breeze. These labels are things we've built on because of our discussions before. This is a far more effective strategy than starting with these things, and students don't have a good grasp of what they are. I would recommend, starting with that familiar, always build from the concrete to the abstract, from the known to the unknown. So if we could go to the next slide, please, Debbie. Thank you. So we can now get in, as if we would be talking with students, is what makes arguments effective. And we could be building a list. We could be building our own rubric, if you will. We could be putting on a Google Doc things that, types of evidence that back up arguments that make it effective. And we could be talking about things that don't necessarily make it effective. And now we can get into to this sheet. And this sheet is on page 1 of your handout, which the link for that is in the chat. And this is an oldie but goldie. This is something that's been around that Bonnie and Susan put out years ago, but
Steve, I don't know if it's me or everyone, but you are cutting out on us a little bit.
okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
just came back. He was frozen.
okay. Okay, can you hear me now? I hope everything's that we're back. Okay, Margaret gave me the 2 thumbs up. Good. Thank you so much for that. But Debbie, if we could go back one, thank you. So this very good. Thank you, Tamara, that the audio came back. So types of evidence we see listed there, we see a brief definition. And what we could do in the third column, this one has been filled out, but what we could do is when we analyze arguments, we could go through and put some examples from different arguments that we do. Those particular samples are from the taxation and revenue retired GD prompt that we'll be looking at in just a minute. But that's better to look at examples from prompts that you're going over in class, or using this with the rest of the reviews of whatever you're doing in the community as well. This helps get students used to these various parts, and then could lead to the discussion. Okay, what's effective? Are statistics and data better?
I don't know about everyone else, but you are frozen for me.
Okay, I am back.
All right.
There we go. Sorry, everyone. Well, these things do happen, and thank you, Debbie, for being quick on the draw and being able to get us back quickly. Okay, so hope everything is well. I see Margaret moving, so I trust that I'm moving as well. So that's a good thing. Okay. So, anyways, we've talked about the types of evidence and worked with our students to try to develop are their own examples of how these might look, which can lead to the discussion about what makes evidence good and what makes it not so good. And I actually said a word I shouldn't. I should say effective and not effective is better than good and not good. So we're always looking what makes an argument effective, what makes it not so effective. Okay, if we could go on to the next slide. Now, a way to collect the evidence is very simple, and we can use a T-chart in order to do this. Over the years, the testing service has recommended some different graphic organizers. I love the Both Sides Now that's been around for a long time. Feedback we were getting from a lot of instructors was saying, well, that's maybe a little bit more elaborate for students, and maybe we could start with that. But one simple and easy way is to use a T-chart because it is very transferable to when students are using their noteboard as they are taking the test. A T-chart transfers very, very well to that. T-chart is extremely simple, and I always believe keep it incredibly simple. What we'll do with a T-chart, and we'll see one filled out in just a second, is essentially we can put the pro on one side, we can put the con on the other side, and we can just very simply list some bullet points or some key words that indicate what evidence we are using to support a various claim. And so that really makes life a lot easier for our students to use a very simple tool to collect evidence. And what could be more simple than a T-chart? So this could really help students effectively go through and be able to analyze an argument and use the T-chart to collect the evidence. Let's go to the next slide, please, Debbie. So this what we see on the screen is an oldie but goldie prompt. This has been around for a while. The taxation revenue. If you've been involved in GD land, you've probably seen this before. And if you haven't, come to seeing it for the first time. I will say that this is a portion of the reading. This is not the complete pro prompt for this. And let's take a look at it because we can see then how we can use this to put the evidence inside the T-chart. And so as we read, we're going to practice those same skills that we've had our students practice to find out, okay, what's the author's purpose? What reasons do they give? What evidence are they trying to use to back that up? So let's see if we can figure out those things from the portion of an actual GED prompt. So let's read this. It says, this bill funds the expansion of Highway 17 from a 2-lane highway to a 4-lane thoroughfare. It will positively affect the town of Oak Falls, Walls said, and that's Representative Walls who is making this bill, putting this bill forward. As part of the expansion, Highway 17 will move 2 miles east of the town of Oak Falls. The bill will ease traffic congestion and create job opportunities during and after construction. Last year, Representative Walls held town meetings to gather opinions from her constituents about revitalizing the economy in the 12th district. 2 years ago, Turnaround Motors and Bell Camera closed their factory doors. The result's been high unemployment with no immediate prospects for new businesses. Representative Walls heard residents' concerns for jobs in the district. Improving the highway means jobs for local construction workers. Once completed, the highway will bring more long distance travelers in the area. Some officials anticipate a 30% increase in highway traffic due to the ease of traveling on the improved Highway 17. An increase in travelers will attract national motel and restaurant chains along the highway route. These national businesses will mean permanent jobs for residents. So let's pause and take a look at this. And what we're seeing here first is, can we identify what the claim is? Let's see, and let's go to the chat again. We did such a great job with this earlier. Let's get our fingers rolling and see if we can identify what claim here is being made? What's the author's purpose? And many times we'll see that in the leading, the opening, the introductory paragraph. What is the author saying about Highway 17? Do they think this is a good thing? Do they think this is a bad thing? And so let's see if we can identify the claim, and then let's also see if we can identify some reasons. Why is this pro point going to be good? And then see if we can get in some specific evidence. So we're doing the same thing we did before: claim, reason, evidence. We're just trying to do this now with an actual GD passage. And the chat is blowing up. Thank you, everyone. Let's see. Althea says the new highway will benefit the town with jobs and ease of traffic. Margaret says, okay, the claim is the new highway is going to have a positive effect, so let's pass the bill. And Rachel very clearly states the claim here: the bill should be passed to expand Highway 17. And Marcia echoes that. Thank you. Let's see now if we've got the claim fairly well identified. Can we get some reasons here? And then can we get some evidence that back up the reasons? See, thank you, Jean. Oh, thank you, Marcia. I'll have to try to remember that. My apologies. I'll try to get it right in the future. Let's see. Margaret says reasons: it'll ease traffic and create jobs. It will. Rachel mentions it will create jobs both on the construction side and restaurant side, and it will provide more permanent jobs. Thank you, Judy. And Jean mentions helping with travel. Tamara says it will ease congestion and create jobs. Good. We're doing really well with this. This is something we could sit down and model with our students. Here's the claim. Here are the reasons. Here's the evidence, using that T chart. And always, as we do this, our goal is to model first, and then gradually have students do more and more, and we do less and less, where we're just being the Vanna White and just writing the stuff instead of helping them to analyze that. So we've done a good job with this on the pro side. Let's take a look at the other side, the con side. If we could please go to the next screen. Awesome. Thank you, Debbie. So let's look at this one, and we're going to do the same thing. And we're going to specifically see if we can look at some reasons and evidence. And thank you, Althea and L. Jackson, for also doing a great job with bringing in some reasons and evidence there for the pro side. So let's look at the con side. So we have the Gazette reports that because Highway 17 runs through 6 states, construction will be paid for with federal funds. That means some of our federal taxes will pay for a road I believe will harm our town. I also believe few residents will use the road, and our town and district will lose money as a result of this highway bypass being paid for by our tax dollars. The road construction jobs are only a temporary bandage on the wound made by our manufacturers closing their doors. Once road construction is finished, only minimum jobs will remain. In fact, the highway will bypass 4 cities in our district alone. Each of these towns will lose business because fewer travelers will pass through them and eat, stay overnight, or purchase gas. There's no guarantee that tourists will drive an extra 2 miles into our town if national chain motels and restaurants are built at the highway exits. The 2001 study that Representative Walls references does show that highway bypasses reduce traffic and noise in towns, but the study also shows they have a negative impact on local businesses. So Margaret said that she's got the claim it's going to harm our town. Jean is talking about losing money as one of the reasons, but wants to see more specifics. And Rachel gets into specifics with a highway expansion will take the business away from the town. And Elle, thank you with getting the claim there. Tamara goes through and also gets some specific information. So we can see then how this will work. We've built from the known to the unknown. We started out with reviews. We carefully analyzed those. We introduced some terminology. We've had discussions on what effective evidence is and is not. And then we've used our T-chart to try to go through and say, okay, what's the claim? What are the reasons? What are the evidence? And as always, anytime that we do this type of work with students, one and done doesn't work. If we go through and show one example of this, they are probably not going to get it. We really want to do several examples, whether that's with the review and some of the practice prompts. We definitely want to make sure that we do it. And thank you, L. Jackson, for a couple more reasons there. Let's go to the next slide where we can see our T-chart in action, please, Debbie. And this is on your handout. You can see that on page 3 of the handout is a filled-in T-chart for the example we just saw. This is actually the full prompt, which we didn't have on those screens due to length reasons. So we can see how very simply, easily, and elegantly the T-chart worked to help us to organize. We see at the top the claim, on the left side for Highway 17 expansion, on the right side against that expansion. And we can see the reasons at the far left where that'll provide jobs and ease traffic congestion are some of the reasons for. It'll harm the town. And there was an argument about federal road funds being used. And then we can see the bullets provide those reasons. So we've got the claim, we've got the big reasons, we've got the evidence from there. And students can build from that, where they've built from the restaurant, where the food was great and the service was wonderful and the prices were reasonable. Now we're building those same skills into analyzing more complex issues like we do with Highway 17. But if we've built the base, students are going to be able to successfully do this on to be successfully analyze the evidence on the more difficult passages that we see here. So we can see this example coming from our 2 prior screens where we filled in the T-chart. And students will be able to do exactly the same thing as they take the real test using the note board, very simply making the T-chart and bringing in the evidence. They may not have to do this so elaborately as I've done here, but they can do a couple of keywords which could refer them back to the prompt to help them as they go through. So thank you, everyone. We've got a wonderful group here in the chat who has put in some good things for what we've done so far. So thank you so much for that. That is awesome. Let's go to the next slide, please, Debbie. So let's talk about some problems here, but more importantly, we're going to talk about some solutions. Students sometimes do not get the score that we hope, and certainly that they hope for the extended response. And there are some reasons for this, which are well documented and long standing. We see in analyzing results that students don't write a full response. We might just get a simple little paragraph, and that is not enough to score. And students aren't following the full prompt when all they do is write a nice, neat little 1 paragraph essay. Problems that have also been found and analyzed by the testing service is that students lack structure and an appropriate tone. And we talked a little bit about tone earlier, that we're trying to adopt a more professional and a more academic tone as we write. Students also have issues with sentence structure going through. And one big problem is that we see students doing summaries instead of analysis. They would go through and say, this person said this, here is their argument, this other person said that, and here's their argument, but that's all they do. Let's look at the summarization versus analysis in more detail on the next slide, please. So let's consider this question. If I were to tell you that I'm a great songwriter, but all I do is play other people's songs, how would you know how good I am? Would we have the evidence that we need to determine whether I'm a great songwriter or not? And we're thinking and we're saying, Steve, probably not. I would want to hear some songs that you've written and be able to use those to judge whether you're a good songwriter or not. This is exactly the same situation that happens when all students do is summarize the arguments from the source text and use a lot of that source text in order to do that. The scoring tool does not have the information to judge whether they're a good writer and that they're effectively backing up what they're asked to do in a prompt to say which argument is better and why. So that's really in a nutshell what's happening and why a lot of students aren't scoring as they should or as they could, because they're doing a summary instead of an analysis. Now, don't get me wrong, a summary is a good skill to teach, and I really believe as a writing teacher that summaries are a high value skill for students to learn. And I would encourage you to teach summary writing in your classrooms, but not for this particular task. Teach students how to write summaries, I believe 1,000%. If a student can summarize something, they understand it, they know it, they're going to be, they've really got it down. This is not the time to do a summary more than a one sentence brief summary. When we do a summary, we're really more interested in what we see here in the chart at the bottom of this um, at the slide. You were interested more in the who, what, when, where. There's really no original thinking. All we're really doing is recapping what someone else has said. Analysis is a different situation entirely. And while we did the who, what, when, where with the summary and the analysis, we really want to focus on why and how. Why are you bringing out this evidence? And how does this support your argument? And it involves original thinking. This is a challenging skill, but I would argue that our students have been arguing since they were little kids. And so they know how to argue. And when I was a younger instructor and not as wise as I am today, I got into arguments sometimes with students and they could argue very effectively. And so I think our students have these argument skills. It's just a question of taking what they already know and the arguments that they are very effective in creating and applying it for this task. So get away from the who, what, when, where, why, but instead go to the why and get to the how. And this is the technique students can develop. We started with a review. Dino's Pizza is great because blah, 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 blah. It's the best pizza place in town because blah, 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 blah. We're building those skills. And so these skills will come out and come true fruition on this particular task. Let's see, Jean says, give them responses from others, helps them to see what they need to do. Yes, models are very effective ways to teach. Thank you, Jean. Models are hugely effective ways to teach and to show that this is what we're looking for and you can do this too. It certainly gives them to shoot something to shoot for. Thank you so much, Jean, for making that great observation. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so here's what happens when we do a summary, and this is an actual student response here. We see that in the red print that you see on your screen is something the student just basically copied from the author's words and their ideas. In the black print is what they themselves wrote. So red is what they copied, black is what they did. And we can see that there's a whole lot more red than black there. And so this student has written a summary of this. They've written a good summary, but they are not going to do very well in this extended response task because they have not analyzed, they've summarized, they've done the who, what, when, where. We don't have the why and the how. The scoring tool will take a look at this and say, this is all very nice and lovely, but I cannot score this because there's not enough of your writing for me to score, just like the song writing part. Um, I'm singing other people's songs. I'm playing other people's songs. You don't know what my song sounds like. Instead, next slide, please. What we want to see is analysis. And we see that here. And see how much happier this gentleman is to the left that he's done analysis as opposed to summary. So what we have in this particular part is in the I don't know what color that is, the light yellow color. The evidence is put in, and then in the light blue color, the explanations there. So we've got evidence from the text. And one of the key things that students don't do a lot of times is they don't explain why the evidence is significant. But see how much more there is of analysis here. Here's the evidence that supports what I'm talking about. This argument was more effective because boom, and then we explain what the reason was. Here's another reason why this argument was more effective than the other one. We've explained it. And he talks about, goes into analysis. The road construction doesn't really solve the employment issue. Um, this is an argument also, unemployed residents need enough income to support a household, and they wouldn't be much better off with just a minimum wage job. Providing these restaurant or motel jobs is very unlikely to feed or support an entire family. I would cry tears of joy if one of my students wrote an effective argument as what was done here. So this is really what's being looked for. They've taken a clear position on which argument was better and why. They've brought in evidence that backs that up, and they've explained how the evidence supports their point. That's golden. That's what we're going to see. That's what we want to see. So clear difference between summary versus analysis. And students can develop these skills. They argue things all the time. They have the skills. They can put those skills to work inside of this task. Next slide, please. I love graphic organizers, and this is another old favorite from GD testing service that Susan Abani had introduced some years ago, and it is ICE. I feel cooler already talking about ICE. ICE is the graphic organizer that stands for introduce, cite, and explain or elaborate. ICE. The I stands for introduce, the C for cite, the E for explain. And we can see it in action as that prompt that we just looked at a minute ago. We're introducing a reason here. Another reason Representative Walls has a weak argument is because there is no guarantee her predictions will come true. So we've introduced that. Now we're going to cite some evidence from the text to back that up. She says the new bypass will bring a 30% increase, resulting in jobs being created when national hotel and chains and restaurants move into the area. But the key thing, and the thing that a lot of students don't do, is they don't explain how that particular piece of evidence is important. And it doesn't have to be a huge, long explanation. This explanation is about three short sentences. It says, just because we build it doesn't mean they will come. Talking about a particular movie here. There's no guarantee that any businesses will move in the area just because a new highway is being built. Motels and restaurants move into areas where they know they'll attract business. This small town area may not be large enough to bring in these chains. So, and as we notice, that's really the biggest part there. We've taken rather several sentences in order to go through to explain why the evidence is important. And this isn't what students are doing, but they can. And this would be a great thing to model in the classroom and getting student input as we're doing it. Have them think of arguments as a group, have them thinking as arguments as a whole group or a table group, and then eventually work from that as an individual. Students can definitely do that. And Jean, thanks for the good words about using some of these ideas, and appreciate the good words. So I love ICE, introduce, cite, explain. And that will really, really help out students to do that. And you will also find that the ICE graphic organizer inside your packet. And that is on page 4 of the packet. So that ICE graphic organizer. Marcia, and I think I got it right this time, said she uses race ACE, restate the question, answer the question, cite evidence, explain it. And race ACE works beautifully as well, Marcia. I don't care what acronym we use as long as we are explaining the evidence and citing it. Both of those things work well. Whether you use ICE, RACE, or ACE, use something, please, but it doesn't matter which one. They all can be very effective. Thank you, Marcia. Let's look at the next slide, please. So this is also in your packet on page 5. These are some helpful phrases that I came across years ago to describe strengths and weaknesses. So these can kind of get us thinking about, when we do that explanation and we were explaining it, what things should we say about it? And so ideally, we could get students to develop a list, but this can kind of get the ball rolling, if you will. And so we see on the screen and in page 5 of the handout some phrases that would discuss strengths. This evidence is better supported, it's more reliable, it's valid, it's logical. it's significant versus like an uncited source where we don't know, like a recent study or something where they don't give any information there. The relevance, as we mentioned when we were looking at the car thing, how old is the review? How old is the study? Is this a study from 1876 or is this a study from 2022? That makes a big difference. Do we have like an expert testimony, somebody with a university degree that's studied this particular field for years versus just a well-known person? Do they give enough reasons to really back it up? So all these things can get the ball rolling as we talk with our students about what makes a good argument and what makes an argument that is not quite as good. And ideally, we'd have students develop their own phrases that they could use as well. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, well, let's do, since we're still here and we're still ready to put something in the chat. In the chat, what's the purpose of scaffolding? And we see a picture of scaffolding in case we're not quite sure what I'm talking about. What is the purpose? What does scaffolding do for a construction worker? People are hitting the keyboard. I see Margaret fingers flying. Let's see. She said it holds them up as they work. Oh, well, Thea, like it builds on a foundation. Judy mentions you can get to a whole nother level. And Jean says it lets them move up. Thank you. All those are wonderful responses. We mention in education scaffolding a lot, and that's really what the purpose of scaffolding is in education. It provides structure, it provides support, and it allows students to reach and get to areas that they cannot yet get to on their own, is the purpose of scaffolding inside education. So let's take a look at an example of scaffolding that can really help students on this task. If we could go to the next slide, please. All right, Siri wanted to get in on the action, so let's stop her there. And thank you for Siri for your weighing in on this as well. What you had to say was good. So one wonderful thing, I absolutely love writing frames, and I think they are so important and can help our students do well on writing tasks. Typically, a lot of students say, I don't know where to start. If I had a nickel for every time I heard that, I would not be doing this webinar today. I would be sipping a nice cool drink in a tropical location. Um, Writing frames solve this problem. And here we have, and this is in your handout on page 6 and page 7, a full writing frame for this task. We had looked before at issues students were having with this task. Frames solve these issues. So we could start out. Let's take a look at this. This is just for the intro paragraph. The frame goes on, and on page 6 and 7, you've got a complete frame for the whole task. It starts out, someone makes the claim that Highway 17 should be expanded. Somebody else makes the claim that it shouldn't. The best argument is that Highway 17 should not be expanded because there's no guarantee it'll help the job situation and it uses federal funds, which is a problem. So right away, by following this frame, students are going to be in good shape because it's helped them summarize the issue, but they've only used 2 sentences to do that. They're talking about what the best issue is and why. I think because is a key word, or a synonym is because that gets students started out on the right foot with their claim. The best argument is Representative Wall's argument to expand it because. See, Margaret, did you have a question or comment?
I do.
Please go ahead.
What I hear you saying after for the because is repeating the argument of the text. But wouldn't that because the best argument is because this author offers stronger evidence and more solid reasons? See what I'm saying?
That would certainly be a great, yeah, that would certainly be a great because. The because can be, the because is where you want to say which argument was more effective than why. So what you said just a minute ago would be outstanding. Say what you said again.
Because, and you could almost say, in my opinion, the argument, the author one had the stronger evidence and more powerful, more logical reasons. And then you could add an author two depends on emotional appeal. So you,
Okay.
your
Yeah, so that's
part of your
exactly what that
analysis.
is. Yeah, that is exactly what you want to do. You want to get into the reason why is it more effective, and that is exactly what you want to do. So the frame has got us rolling and has got us into the great start, and that start will continue as we go on to the next screen. So now we get into body paragraphs. The first reason this argument is better because insert reason here. Now we get into what we were talking about with the ice, introduce it, cite it, explain it, or the race ace, if you like what Marcia was explaining there as well. And we bring in the evidence, and we've got a number of lines in which to do that. And we have the most blank lines for the evidence shows that where we'd explain it, where could talk about things like, hotel and restaurant jobs are, typically minimum wage jobs. They will not necessarily provide the income that a factory job did that folks were earning before. And so these jobs don't really replace the ones that were lost, and really get into that evidence explanation. So the frame helps us to do that. This is better, and it's better because here's the evidence, and then explain that evidence. Doesn't have to be a huge long explaining the evidence, a sentence two or three to be able to do that. And when students practice that in class, they'll be ready to do that and to do that successfully on the real task. So I do think these writing frames are worth their weight in gold and are really help get learners on the right track. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right. So thank you, Margaret, for being here, and appreciate your good comments. Other questions? Margaret is ready. What do we have, Margaret? Oh, Margaret's saying she had to go. Okay. I
I
thought
gotta
you were
head
putting your
out
hand
to
up
a
to say, I had
meeting,
a question.
Steve. Thanks, I'm saving
Gotcha.
goodbye.
Oh,
Thank
goodbye.
you.
Enjoy your meeting. But now is the time. We have time for questions or
Right.
comments or thoughts. And we'll be just about ready to wrap up here in just a minute. We'll be sharing some resources in just a minute. Althea or Alethea. I think
Alethea,
it's
thank you.
Alethea.
Alethea.
Alethea, yes. I'm just grateful. I just started instructing GED this semester, and I was on the right track for the argumentative. But this is giving me even more for myself scaffolding on how to present the information to the students and to give them more support in developing their arguments. So I'm grateful that I attended today and feel more confident in helping them to make their written portion successful.
Well, I'm sure in your classroom they will be very successful. And welcome to the adult education family. And so glad that you're here. And thank you for those words.
Thank you.
Those were my thoughts too, Stephen. Welcome to Adult Ed. Thank you very much.
Let's see. Judy says, can you speak to writing reluctance? And yes, I can. That's a great question, Judy. And I think just getting students to write to start out with, I would not start out with doing this task to get them over their writing reluctance, but I like to just start out with some fun writing like picture captioning. There's the New York Times Education Network has what's going on in this picture, and they have fun pictures from the New York Times that have been stripped of their caption and context. And we could just write a short phrase for those. We could do things like quick writes where we've got maybe just a sentence or a couple of sentences, and we ask students to respond to a prompt. We can really demystify writing as to what it is. There's a technique, Judy, called writer's workshop, where it gets students really thinking of themselves as writers. we can lose the red grammar pen and not make students' writing look like someone was shot and bled out while they're writing assignment, which used to happen to me when I was an emerging writer back in school, and really just let them write it and not focus on grammar, punctuation, spelling, but just get them writing on some things that they feel comfortable with. And I'm a firm believer in nothing succeeds like success. When they have these experiences and low stakes writing tasks, and are successful and get good feedback from peers and from we as instructors, they will be a lot more likely to go ahead and write. Let's see, Marcia says integrate reading with writing. Yes, the reading writing connection is huge. So they understand that connection instead of teaching writing as a separate topic. Couldn't agree more, Marcia. Very well said. Judy, I hope you have some good things to get you going. And Judy, I'm going to have my email up here in a minute, and I'd be happy to send you a packet for writing a more in-depth writing workshop that I do that goes into writing anxiety and in some ways to deal with that. But before we reveal the email, let's talk a little bit about some classroom resources. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this is also in your handout on the very last page, on page 8. This may be some of the most retired prompts at one location in history. I don't know, but that's a lot of them anyway. What I would recommend, well, this page has links to 32 prompts. And the old saying is, or the old funny question is, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And the answer to that is practice, practice, practice. And so there are on this page 32 different prompts. Writing for the GD Test Book 4 has 21 prompts on a host of different topics. And then the ones you see below are retired prompts from the testing service. And there are actually 11 of those, including such favorites as daylight savings time, which I think I could still recite in my sleep, having trained on it so many times back in the day. And the plastic bags and traffic lights and the taxation and revenue, which we went over to today. So between those two sources, you should be able to have much experience. You can give your students a whole lot of experience for being ready for this task. So please use those and please practice those with your students is one great way to do that. If we could go to the next slide, please. I heartily recommend these two books, Writing for the GED Book 3 and Writing for the GED Test Book 4. These are from our friends at New Readers Press, and they are a partner with the GED testing service. And these books go through how to do the response. Book 3 from the beginning, it talks about how to read the response, how to analyze the response, how to plan a response, how to write the response, and then how to edit the response. So very complete treatment of how to do this task. Book 4 is writing prompts, and there are a number of prompts in there in order to help students there. As I mentioned, there's 21 in the new and improved 2018 edition, so that should give plenty of help and practice on those. So both of those are great resources. And if we could go to the next slide, please. The extended response videos are really good. And this again was created by our friends at New Readers Press. And I think I have seen each of these videos more than any other human alive because I integrated these videos when I did. Oh, in the interest of full disclosure, I did writing for the GD Test Book 4, and I was involved in the 2018 rewrite of Book 3, but I do not benefit financially in any way, shape, or form from the sale of those books, and I'm glad that New Readers Press does because they are a wonderful organization. But anyways, these extended response videos go along. I integrated those in the rewrite of Book 3. And beginning on page 46, I integrate all 7 of the videos that Alice does as she writes her extended response. Those are fantastic videos. They really do a good job. I always judge a video by what the comments say. And I have seen these videos been out now for oh gosh, 7 years now.
Mhm.
And there are a number of positive comments. So I know they have been helping students over the years. And you can find those on YouTube. If you search for how to write a great GED extended response, you can, and I'll type that in the chat, how to write a great GED extended
And
response. You
Steve, they are
can find that
also
on
on the
YouTube.
GED.com website also. You can get to them
Absolutely.
under the English materials in on our website also.
And they're also
Yeah,
in the
very.
student account
Ah,
under study and language arts. The videos are embedded in the student's account now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liz. I'm so glad they are, because they are one of the greatest things that have come out to help students. They are really, really good. So I hope today that you're coming away with some good resources, some good material, maybe some fresh thoughts and fresh perspectives on this task. It is a challenging task, but it is one that our students can definitely do. And it is certainly well worth whatever time we invest in it, because it's on this, it's about 20% of the total points possible, which is that's a pretty significant amount on this RLA test. And of course, more than the RLA, we want our students to prepare to be great members of the workforce, great members of society, participate actively in their community, and this task helps them to do that. So thank you so much, everyone who is here today. And I know Debbie has a few more things to share.
I do, and I want to thank you, Steve, because this is information that you have been sharing for a number of years, but we are happy to keep going over it. I've been doing it for a long time. I always hear when another person says the same thing I think I'm saying, I pick up on a different nuance that I can add in. If you don't mind, a couple of things that I heard you say that I think were so important that I want to make sure it didn't get missed along the way. I love the both sides now and the T-chart, but what I also know is it's filled with pros and cons, and sometimes that can be overwhelming to the students. So what we want to say is, yes, you've got a lot of different pieces of reasons or evidence for pro and con, but when it comes time for the student to write, it is better to really hone in on the evidence and the analysis of 2 or 3 of those reasons rather than do a laundry list without explaining the why. And I think that is really an important fact. And I know you discussed that quite a bit. And I love the fact, the slide on the original text. Students don't understand that if you don't put enough of your own writing in there, the scoring engine can't score your report. So always learn, paraphrasing is such an important skill. So, and you hit on it. I just want to go back and remind people how important that is to them when they are working through these things. So thanks very much. I'm going to see what we have in our next slide. Surprised myself. You've already had your turn, but you can still continue to ask any questions. That's just a slide and a reminder, because here is Stephen's email address, so you can find him. You know us at GED Testing Service. The easiest way that nobody has to remember our names and our addresses, we are all at GED.com. But if you have a question, all you do is type in contact us at GED.com. Okay. And we have people that read these all day long. The minute it comes in and we know what state you're from, it's going to either be, if it's a professional development question, it may come to me. And if it's about a state specific question, they will send it to the your state relationship manager. So that's how you find us, at contact us at GED.com. If you can't remember our name and our personal email address, we'll get the message that way. Steve, I want to thank you so much, and we look forward to you joining us on another Tuesdays for Teachers down the road. And if there are any other comments to clear up, if there are questions, I think we made it very clear. within 72 hours, we post all of this information. That's where you can download your certificate. And we are always accessible to you. The only way we know what you're interested in is to hear from you. And that's how we decide what our topics will be. So, Stephen, I'll let you say a final farewell. I want to thank Liz for helping us out and those of you who joined, and Stephen.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Really, it was my joy to be here, and I really am excited about doing some PD for the GED testing service, which is something that I've wanted to do for years. So thank you for helping me to realize this goal, and thank you, Liz and Jonna and everyone else behind the scenes who has helped with today's presentation today. And yeah, this will be back in December, and I know
Yes.
there's another one coming up next month, but I'll look forward to being back in December. But thank you so much, everyone, for being here today.
Thanks, Steve. And I do want you to know that these are the 2 more that we have planned. We do our sessions on professional development, on content every other month, and Steve will be back with us on December 10th. We have what we call a special edition that'll be in our quote off month for content. And I wanted you, as the people attending the session today, to have first grab at that. We'll be sending that email out shortly. And then 2 weeks before the September 10th date, you'll be getting your email invitation there. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Go out and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Debbie,
Yes.
can you make the a hyperlink for the handout? I wasn't able to access it. Can you put a hyperlink on it so I can open it?
Let's see. I can't do that right now. Is it in the chat?
I just put it in the chat.
Yeah. If you can look in the chat, or Steve, can you do that now and it'll be on the bottom of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not a hyperlink, so I'm not able to open it. And I'm trying to
You
like,
can, if you just grab it and put it in the top of your browser, it'll take you to that. We can't hyperlink it inside
Yeah, not in the
the
chat.
chat.
okay.
Copy it and paste it. You ought to
Okay.
be
Yeah,
okay.
copy and paste it at the top of your browser and it'll take you right
Oh,
there. Or if you're still having some trouble getting it, just shoot me an email and I'll be happy to send it to you.
okay. Thank you guys so much. This was so awesome. I was halfway there trying to get them to write. And now I am more able to focus and hone in on how to help them.
You're an adult ed now. You got a great support
Mhm.
network. All
Yeah.
you have to do is ask questions. We're
I'm
all
loving
here.
it. I am loving it. Thank you guys. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Let's see.